You say goodbye to your brother beside a frozen river. You will not see him again for 6 months. Neither of you owns a calendar, a clock, or any way to send a message. And yet, when the ice breaks, both of you walk toward the same bend in the same valley and arrive within a couple of weeks of each other. Nobody had to be told. That happened routinely, for thousands of years, across distances of 200 miles or more. The question is how. And the system that made it work left almost nothing behind to dig up. Start with why they separated at all. A big group is a good thing. More hunters, more hands, more people who remember where the good stone is. But a big group eats a lot in one place. In winter, on open tundra, food is thin and spread out across enormous distances. 50 people standing in one valley will starve. So the band breaks apart, 4 or 5 families each, heading for a different valley, a different stretch of coast, a different sheltered patch of woodland. Lewis Binford described this pattern in a 1980 paper, drawing on years spent with the Nunamiut of Alaska. Groups that scatter and regather on a seasonal rhythm, year after year. Richard Lee saw the same logic running the other way in the Kalahari. Scattered across the land in the wet season, packed tight around permanent waterholes once things dried out. Either way, the group has to come back together. Marriages get arranged there. News travels. Stone and shell change hands. You find out who died over the winter. So the meeting is not optional. Miss it for a few years running, and your children may have nobody to marry. Which leaves the obvious problem. Where and when? Where is the easier half? And the likeliest answer is that nobody chose it. The place was already the place before you were born, and you learned it as a child. Dolní Věstonice sits in southern Moravia, beneath the Pavlov Hills, on a stream running through a gap between highlands. People camped there around 29,000 years ago. Karel Absolon began excavating it in the 1920s. What came out was not a small camp. Mammoth bone in quantity, hearths, dwellings, and a kiln full of fired clay fragments, including a small fired clay figure of a woman made around 29,000 years ago, the oldest known ceramic object anywhere. This was somewhere people came to, not somewhere they passed through. Roughly 17,000 years later, 1,000 miles west, the same idea. Pincevent, on the Seine southeast of Paris, excavated by André Leroi-Gourhan from 1964. Pincevent is a reindeer camp, occupied again and again. Hearths, butchery, flint-knapped and dropped exactly where it fell. And the reindeer teeth say autumn, over and over. Both places share one feature that matters more than anything else. They are impossible to mistake. A gap in the hills. A river crossing. A meeting of 2 waters visible from far off. My reading is that this is most of the trick. You never have to agree on a location if the location is inherited. Learned young, walked to a dozen times, unmistakable when you get close. The place is a landmark, not a decision. Nobody negotiated it. Which leaves the genuinely hard half of the problem. Not where, but when. There is no evidence anyone was counting days toward a fixed date. And there is a much simpler system available. It is walking past you, several thousand strong. Reindeer migrate. They move in predictable directions at predictable times, in herds you can hear before you see. And they cross rivers at the same shallow places every single year. At Pincevent, growth layers inside reindeer teeth, laid down annually like tree rings, cluster the kills in autumn. The camp filled up when the herd arrived, not when someone decided. Salmon do the same thing on a different schedule. More than 20,000 years ago, someone carved a life-size salmon into the low ceiling of a rock shelter in the Vézère Valley. So the appointment is not the 15th of April. The appointment is when the ice goes out of the river and the herds come back through the gap in the hill. That is a signal every group receives independently, in their own valley, without anyone sending anything. The weather delivers the same message to all 50 people at once. It is also loose. A season shifts. A river opens 2 weeks late. That is fine, as long as the plan tolerates it. And the plan tolerates it, because the plan includes waiting. But the ice going out is not nothing to track. You still want a sense of how long you have been waiting, and how much longer. Here the evidence gets genuinely contested. In 1937, at Dolní Věstonice, excavators recovered a wolf bone with 55 notches cut along it, arranged in groups of 5, with one longer mark partway down. Objects like it turn up across Ice Age Europe, bone and antler carrying rows of marks, sometimes in neat clusters, sometimes in long, unbroken series that run off the edge. In 1972, Alexander Marshack published a book called The Roots of Civilization, arguing that some of these were lunar records. Marks added night by night, tracking the moon through its cycle. He looked hardest at a small engraved plaque from Abry Blanchard in the Dordogne, roughly 30,000 years old, and read its winding sequence of marks as 2 months of moon phases. It is a seductive idea, and it might be right. But from the late 1980s, Francesco D'Errico put objects like these under a microscope and studied the marks themselves. His conclusion was split. Yes, the marks were often made at different times, with different tools. These do accumulate. No, the specific lunar reading is not demonstrated by the marks. That distinction matters. Nobody serious thinks these objects are meaningless doodles. The argument is about whether we can read them. And the honest answer is that mostly we cannot. My own view is that they were not appointment books. A tally you carry only helps you meet someone if they began counting on the same day from the same event and kept it up. Whatever those notches counted, they cannot tell us who actually turned up. For that, you have to look at the stone people were carrying when they arrived. Flint has a fingerprint. Stone from one outcrop differs from another in color, texture, and the fossils trapped inside, and archaeologists can often match a single flake to its source. At the Moravian sites, the raw material is a mixture. Local chert plus flint carried down from southern Poland, hundreds of kilometers north, plus radiolarite from the Carpathians. And shells. Marine shells from the Mediterranean and the Black Sea turn up in Moravian camps and graves, more than 500 kilometers from the nearest coastline. None of that proves a Polish family walked in for the spring gathering. Things travel hand to hand, through many owners. But the pattern says these camps sat inside a very wide network. At Pincevent, refitting work, physically reassembling napped flakes back into the original nodule, showed that some cores arrived already partly worked, prepared somewhere else, and carried in. People arrived carrying their own valley with them. Which brings us to the part nobody enjoys thinking about. The groups that did not arrive at all. There must have been years when a family simply never appeared. A bad winter, an accident on the ice, a river that behaved strangely, an illness that took the people who knew the route. Archaeology cannot see that. We see the gatherings that worked, the ones with the hearths and the debris and the figurines. A failed rendezvous leaves no site to excavate. So the system had to be forgiving. Arrive early and wait. Leave signs that you were there. Come back next year because the place is still the place. And next year, it fills again. What strikes me is that none of this required an agreement. No date was ever set. Nobody was late because there was no fixed time to be late against. The calendar was the ice and the animals, and everyone read the same copy at the same moment. The meeting place was not chosen. It was handed down, like a name. We still run a thinner version of it. The same beach every August. The same corner of the same pub. No message sent, no plan confirmed, and somehow everybody comes.